Hello and welcome. We have a fun show for you tonight. I'm talking with a man that is one of the most eclectic persons I've met. He has a great combination of life stories and experiences. He has gotten to know personally more well-known leaders from all walks of life than anybody I've met in my 35 years of interviewing people. I'm talking with Barry ZeVan. Barry has, in many of your eyes, been a weatherman here for KSTP and KARE 11. But he's been an actor, a singer, a documentary maker, stage and movie and television career person. So we're going to talk about some of the highlights from his life and about a new book that is just coming out. He just told me this is the first interview he's done about the book called Barry ZeVan, My Life Among the Giants, a Memoir. And
the top of the book says,
and this was the title for a while, thank you, Jerry Stiller, for urging me to write this book.
That's right.
And there's a story right there that we should maybe start with, Barry.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it so much.
Of course.
Jerry and Ann Mira, his late wife, and I knew each other in the 1950s, in 1952-53, when I was acting on national television on Mr. Peepers with Wally Cox and Tony Randall. But we would find ourselves up in the NBC studios just during the time that they were making the rounds and starting to do the Ed Sullivan Show. Now we fast forward to the 1980s, and Jerry is here at the Guthrie in Guys and Dolls. So I was a reviewer for Channel 11, and I gave him this Boffo review as he was playing Nathan Detroit, and just phenomenally. And so from that time, Jerry and Ann said, we want you to be part of our lives. And God bless them for that. That's before Ben Stiller was almost even thought of. Now Ben is the big
is
name.
A hot young actor.
Yeah. So anyway, Jerry said, he told me for several years, he said, you've got to write your book. He said, you're a lot more than weather reports and so forth and so on. So I asked him finally, I said, okay, you've been pushing me and pushing me. Can I title the book? Thank you, Jerry Stiller, for urging me to write this book. He loved it. He said, go ahead, and I have it in writing. So that's how that happened.
Well, the book, I've been reading it for 2 or 3 weeks because it's so full of stories that you can't just whisk through it. And I wondered how you remembered all the details. Did you keep a journal as you went through life?
No. In fact, I was just asked that the other day if I kept a diary. No, I just have one of these. It's either a
photographic mind?
Yeah, it's called an eidetic memory, and I can pinpoint things, and I tried to analyze why. And it just must have been that everything made an impression on me from the time I was 2, and I just remembered a piece of music can play, and I can transport myself back to a certain time when that will trigger memories of what was happening during that time. Even the color of the studio where I did my first radio broadcast in 1943. Wow. You know, it was a lime green.
So this is kind of a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, I mean,
in some ways.
Yeah, it drives you crazy because you start remembering so much, and you just want to say, shut up already.
Yeah,
I don't want to remember all this
But
stuff.
it's great for the book in terms of filling us in. I almost felt like I met many of these people that you're good friends with.
Thank you.
When you sit on an airplane, you're going to fly tomorrow, and someone says, who are you and what have you done in your life? How do you pick from all your different facets of your career? And which one stands out in your mind, Barry?
It's difficult to isolate. It really is. I mean, people say, well, what do you do? Or what have you done? I say, well, do you have 10 hours?
this.
Yeah, it's just been such a kaleidoscope. And I feel badly about it, too, because I can't give a soundbite answer. and I really
Well,
can't.
that's understandable. When you read the book, you'll understand why he can't. You started out as just a little boy, and tell us briefly the story of
Okay.
how your mom got you
Well,
going in showbiz.
There was, first of all, I was kind of born into it. My grandfather was a first violinist for the Pittsburgh Symphony under Fritz Reiner in 1938. He was also Milton Berle's and George Burns and Gracie Allen's agent, booking them in most of their gigs, as they say, back in those days. So when I was 2 years old, Arthur Treacher lifted me up on stage at the Stanley Theater in Pittsburgh and said, "This child was born for the footlights." So I think that triggered in my mother's thinking that, oh, maybe he is show business too.
Were you an outgoing,
Yeah.
kind of fun-loving little boy? I bet you were.
Yeah, I was. And my second cousin, Cecil Brown, was one of Edward R. Murrow's boys in London during World War II. He was ABC's first anchorman, and Cecil's mother and my grandmother were sisters. So my mom grew up with Cecil, and during our years in New York together, we spent a lot of time with him at ABC. And so I was kind of born into it. But as far as the actual show business part, there was a radio program called Starlets on Parade on KDKA Radio, which was the world's first commercial radio station. And so a friend of my mother's said, "You've got to get..."
This is in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh,
right,
yeah.
yes.
So a friend of my mother's said, "You've got to get Barry on to sing on Starlets on Parade." Well, in those days, you could actually go down to the studio and be on the air the same day. So we went in, and the producer, her name was Betty Dugan, and our organist, it's listed in the book, his name was Aniron Bodycomb. Nobody will ever forget that name. And so they had me sing a song, and I swear to you, I can't remember right now. I remember everything, I can't remember what I sang. But it passed the test, and she said, "Okay, he can be part of the group."
And you were
5.5 years old.
5 years old. Oh.
Yeah. So it was February 20th, 1943.
And do you remember, did you find it fun or?
I was terrified.
Oh, you were?
I was scared to death, but part of me focused on what I was supposed to do. So they invited me back, and I was on that thing for 2 years. And there's even a photo of me, which I should have put in the book in the KDKR, hello, easy for me to say, KDKA archives of all of us standing on the platform, and I'm very recognizable in that photo.
Well, some of the history that you have collected in terms of photos and notes and autographs, I mean, as someone said, your home is like a museum. What I'd like to do is ask you about some, and I'd like to do all kinds of big questions here, but I'd like to ask you some fun memories of some people that everybody is curious about and knows about. And if you could give me just kind of a short, but
I'll do my best.
we'll see how many names we go through here.
Okay.
Howard Hughes, you had a connection with him when you worked out in Las Vegas?
Yes, I worked for Mr. Hughes. Our paychecks came from the Hughes Tool Company. And
one of his subsidiaries.
well, that was how he got his millions. But anyway, actually I was his promotion manager, sales service manager, and also I did the weather and a talk show. So we used to get our marching orders from him on handwritten yellow pads. And I never knew that he really knew much about me. I did a couple of things for him, and it would take too much time on this program to tell you, which helped him considerably win a lot of money from the Atomic Energy Commission. And then, so anyway, the two things that stand out most in my mind, I almost died. I literally died the night before my birthday in 1968. And so when I went to pay my hospital bill, I was in the hospital for a month. They said, "Oh no, Mr. Hughes has taken care of everything." I mean, we had insurance, but he wouldn't even have us use that. Then when I quit to go to the ABC station, about a month afterward, I'm sitting in the lounge of the Frontier Hotel with the orchestra leader who I knew. Al Alvarez was his name, and he said, "Barry," he said, "do you know that Hughes loved you?" I said, what? How? What? What's this? He said, well, one of his aides quit a month ago, and do you recall anybody calling you at the control room one night asking if you were changing your style of presentation? And I remembered that call, a very articulate person. He said, are you changing your style? And I said, no, I just don't feel well tonight. He said, thank you, that's all we wanted to know. We was Howard Hughes. And
so he was tuned into your nuances, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Woody Allen, you also met him out in Las Vegas.
Well, I directed him in 3 live television shows. And after the third one, there was a flood in Las Vegas. The only floods in which I've ever been have been in Las Vegas. And there's a lot of reasons for that too, but anyway, for its flooding. Anyway, I had to drive Woody. I had a little red Triumph. I had to drive him from the studio up to Caesar's Palace where he was performing. And he was as nervous as could be because...
And doesn't that fit our image of Woody?
Oh yeah, he was like this the whole time. And so finally we get up to Caesar's driveway, and if you remember, the strip out in Las Vegas kind of elevates a little bit as you go farther toward LA. So we drive into the Caesar's driveway, and he looks at me with that little grin of his. He said, gee, you really did it, didn't you? Just like that. And I said, yeah, I had precious cargo there. So that was that. But he was very sweet. We've kept in touch.
And he's still going strong, isn't he, at 80?
Yeah.
Elvis Presley, another Las Vegas connection.
That was a joy. A friend of mine named Irv Benson, he was on the Milton Berle show, TV show. He was a good friend of Elvis's. So one night Irv said, come on over to the Silver Slipper. Elvis just got married last night. I know where he's going to be. It'd be fun for you to meet him. So we go up to the Aladdin Hotel, and he knew precisely the blackjack table where Elvis was, and Priscilla's sitting next to him, looking daggers at Elvis.
Is this what I want to be doing on my honeymoon?
That's exactly right. So anyway, he introduced me, and Elvis said that he had watched me on the weather. He said, I enjoy your weather reports, and I said, well, I enjoy your singing, you know. And he kind of smiled, and that was it. He was just so, he was genuinely warm.
You
and
said
sweet.
he was just, a very nice person.
Very, very, yes.
And you seem to have, and I was really thinking about it as I read, you seem to have a way to, when you meet well-known people, and of course you're well-known too, but you seem to have a way to get them to relax and be authentic.
Well, thank you.
What do you think
Thank you.
it is, just in terms of communication, that...
Well, it's certainly not disrespect. It's I don't know, and thank you for that. That's a wonderful thing to say and to hear. I've always had that reaction almost 100% of the time.
That's, as I read the book, I thought, this is unusual.
Yeah, they were always welcoming me into their little big circles, I
Even
should say.
Sophia Loren, your little story about meeting her casually, and you said goodbye, and she said, oh no, keep talking, I want to keep
she
talking.
grabbed my coat and ripped me back.
Yeah, I
where
mean,
she
so
was.
there's something about you that helps people open up.
Well, it's very nice, thank you. Very
David
blessed.
Letterman, one of my favorite comedians. There's a real interesting connection with David and you and the Twin Cities.
Oh, yes.
Tell us the story.
Okay. On Labor Day weekend, 1974, I was on my way to Washington, D.C. to sign the agreement to move from the Twin Cities. David didn't know
As a
weatherman.
Man.
So anyway, David had come up to audition to be a weatherman on Channel 9, but he called Jim Gilliland, a sports guy over at 9. Randy Shaver and Jeff Passo told me this story. And they said to Gilliland, he said, I'm supposed to audition tomorrow to be a weatherman. He said, but I'm not coming over. I just watched this guy on Channel 5, and I don't want to compete with him, so I'm going to go back to Indianapolis. And it's a true story. And that's what propelled him back into stand-up comedy. He didn't know that I was on my way to D.C. the next day to eventually leave the cities. The Star Tribune did a big article about it a long time ago.
That's one of those things that timing. Timing is everything, isn't it? Sometimes in life.
Absolutely.
Or often.
Always.
Always. I keep changing the adjective there. So David Letterman's career changed, and your work as a weatherman didn't go quite as well out on the East Coast as it did here or in Las Vegas. Would you?
Well, it did, but they didn't allow me to do what
You couldn't do your shtick, could you?
No. And there's quite a story about that, too.
Right.
Yeah. WCCO TV was consulted by the same station where I was hired. And when I got there 6 days later, they said, we don't want you to do what you did in Minneapolis. And I said, why? They just wanted you out of town. WCCO just wanted you out of town. And I have no animosity toward WCCO or Ron Hanberg, who was the news director, who had said, get this guy a job to their consultants. And I
so
bid for
you were a
it.
competition that they didn't want to deal with, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Well, CCO, Ron Hanberg said to me in a public forum about a year ago, he said, you were killing us, and we wanted you out. And
Well, didn't
sad
you have
part,
the highest ratings?
Yeah, 51% share of the audience, and it's still a record in the United States.
And that's for
Weather.
being a weatherman.
Yeah.
And that's a national record, isn't it? That's amazing. I mean, 51%, that doesn't,
These
I mean,
days.
it's the only, it's the highest number. So what was it about your sense of doing weather that freed you up so much to have so much fun? People might like to Google you during some of your weather reports.
Thanks. Well, I was pretty uninhibited, you know, and I think, and Mr. Hubbard always said, he said, one of the reasons we hired you is because you were different, and you also, he used some very nice adjectives, let's put it that way.
You made it fun.
Well, thank you. But it was never, and two, if there was ever something that was serious, we were having a tornado or we were having a blizzard or something, I'm not going to make fun of it.
Right.
So,
right.
which I didn't, you know. But if you can inject a little personality. When I got hired, Bob Newhart was the reason I got here. I had a talk show in Las Vegas, television talk show, and Newhart used to be on quite a bit. And he said, you belong in a much bigger market. He said, why don't you get a broadcasting magazine and see what's out there? So the next week, it said, Upper Midwest television station wants personality weatherman, apply to box such and such. And as you know, they don't tell you what station. So I decided, and sent a tape. I sent the wackiest tapes I could find. And I figured if they choose me, they really want me. A week later, Ralph Dolan called me up from KSTP and said, we want to talk to you. You blew everybody away. So that's how I got here.
And we were at that time here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, 12th largest market.
Yeah.
And Las Vegas was 120th
120th.
or something. So that was a big jump up for you.
Oh yeah, and Newhart said, he said, you go to the Twin Cities, he said, it's a fabulous market, and you know, you'll be a hit there. And so that was very nice.
And you said your heart really stayed here, even though you left here and went other places.
Oh yes, yeah.
But this is home, I think,
Yeah.
more than
I've lived here
any
almost
of the other
half my
cities.
Yeah, I've lived here almost half my life.
Tell us what you're doing now. I know you're working at Channel 6. You wrote the book, which was a major project this year.
Thank you.
Are you still doing some consulting work and some promotional work? And
Yeah, for various clients. The primary one is called the Moskotova, it's Svetlana Moskotova Educational Institute. They're based in Orlando, Florida, and Warsaw, Poland. And they help people with autism problems, concussion problems, this, that, and the other. This brilliant woman from Russia who left there, you know, because of many things that were happening, but she created this method to help people live better lives who have these problems.
so you've been someone that's helped promote her work.
Right.
And,
And making documentaries too occasionally.
right. And one of your documentaries was nominated for an Emmy.
3 Emmy nominations
3?
and 1 Telly Award. Yep.
Oh, that's
Yeah. With Sam
fabulous.
Donaldson. Sam Donaldson was my host, and bless his heart, we knew each other back in the DC days too.
Peter Jennings, another very good friend when we're thinking about top broadcast names.
Yeah, he was like a brother.
That's what you
Yeah,
said in the book.
we had so many stories together, it'd be difficult to pinpoint one.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And his
actually,
wife was a close friend too.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, he was married 4 times, and then,
Right.
but Anushka, his wife, during our DC days, she was Lebanese from Beirut, but she was born in Egypt, and her family was still in the hills during all the fighting over there, and so Annie she was pretty nervous quite a bit of the time.
I bet, anxious. I loved the unusual quote at his funeral that you quoted. Peter Jennings loved all women, but he only married 4.
That was Ted Koppel who said
Ted
that.
said that.
At
That was
the memorial service, yeah, and Ted
a
was
moment of levity.
yeah, Ted was a nearby neighbor of ours in Potomac, Maryland,
you got
too.
to know him well.
Very well. We still keep in touch.
Yeah, I love Ted Koppel.
Yeah, well, he's a wonderful man, and there's some fun stories about him in the book, too, as you know.
When he knocked on your door that rainy day and he's standing there in his flip-flops and shorts,
Oh,
that
my
was a
God.
fun one.
If I had a camera, do I have time to tell that story, or do I?
Tell it quickly. Yes,
Okay.
you do.
I went to Iran the second time. I did a film in Iran for the Shah to get skiers over there.
Right.
So anyway, Ted told me about a place in Tehran that had golden beluga caviar for $15 a tin. He said, bring me back 2 tins and I'll pay you for it. So I get back, and the next morning in the pouring rain, he wakes me up at 8 o'clock in the morning, banging on the door, $30 in his hand. He says, where's my caviar?
So you guys were neighbors.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So you found the cheap caviar.
Yeah. Yeah, I know where that store
That's a
is.
great story. What's your biggest regret? We've got about 4 minutes left.
Wow.
You've had so many great successes, but there's been ups and downs in your life.
Yeah. Biggest regret is quitting KSTP,
Was it?
period. That's it.
And taking that
and
offer out in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, so many things happened because of that offer, of course, that never would have happened, or certainly not that way. I mean, I got to travel all over the world because of the DC days, and Willard Scott and I became like brothers, and I mean, you know, some pretty wonderful things happened, but as far as security is concerned, anybody watching this who's in their 20s and 30s, if you're happy somewhere, stay there. And if they offer you a lifetime job, definitely stay there. And that's what Mr. Hubbard did the last day I was there. He said, you can stay here the rest of your life, and I'll put it in writing. I said, Mr. Hubbard, I never knew what it was like to have a lot of money. I want to find out. Well,
So money isn't the secret to good living, is it?
No.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
What are you proudest about, Barry, when you look at your whole wonderful life?
that I was lucky enough to make people enjoy what I did or make their lives a little more enjoyable. Not that I think I'm any big deal. The proudest moment as far as the career was interviewing President Truman, and that's in the book too, and that's
Right.
that was quite an event. I mean, that's like a history book talking to you like
Yes,
this.
yes.
So it just, yeah, that was pretty heady stuff.
We've got a couple minutes now that you've gotten us curious. Tell the viewers just the summary of how that came about.
Well, I was a speech doctor, sort of, for Senator Frank Church in Idaho. This was in Idaho Falls. And Frank said, Truman's coming in to stomp for me to be reelected. This was October of '63. So I said, do you think he would do an interview? He said, well, there are a couple of other guys, and you, I'll put the 3 of you together. And so we got to interview Truman. And
This is 63.
1963, yeah.
63.
And he autographed the photo that's in the book in '64. Autographed it for my mother in his hotel room in New York. But anyway, that was incredible. One of the many stories he told was how he was furious with President Roosevelt the day after President Roosevelt died. And I said, how could this be? He said, well, and he didn't mince any words. I'm getting kind of goosebumps thinking about this right now, but anyway, he said the next day after Roosevelt died, they had to have a cabinet meeting and keep the country running. So the Secretary of War, Henry Stimson, said, Mr. President, this is at the end of the meeting, said, there's something we haven't told you and Mr. Roosevelt didn't want you to know. And he said, what's that? He said, it's something called the Manhattan Project. And he said, why wasn't I told? And of course, the development of the atomic bomb.
Right.
And he said he didn't feel you were smart enough to handle it in so many words. I think those were actually the exact words. And Truman said he immediately ordered things to happen for the atomic bomb to be dropped.
And that's not something we've read. At least I had not read that until I saw it in the book.
Yeah, it's not too well known. It's known, but not too well known. Yeah.
As a lot of your stories. Well, I want to hold the book up again, My Life Among the Giants, a memoir. Walter Mondale has endorsed it highly, and he's someone, too, that you have some stories about. The book is going to be available on Amazon.
Yes.
Very, very soon. When this interview airs, it will be definitely available. Will it go into bookstores too at some point? Do you know?
Sometime in the future, yeah. But for right now, the publishing industry has changed quite a bit.
Oh, it has.
so for right now, for quite a while, maybe ad infinitum, it'll be on Amazon.
People love using Amazon, and that's a great way. And there are some wonderful photos in this book that I'm anxious to peek at because I got a first draft and didn't see the photos. So thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Great to get to know you a little bit and learn about your fascinating, wonderful life, Barry. So
thank you, Mary.
Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. I'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week. Bye-bye.